everyone, it's Movie Lover 120 here, and I'm here with episode 2 of my Halloween horror movie reviews, and this is going to be for a horror movie I've been meaning to review for some time. And this is for Eli Roth's second movie he did after the success of Cabin Fever, and that is Hostel, the infamous torture porn flick. So, let me recap this. In 2002, Eli Roth released a horror comedy movie, or a little bit of a, that was kind of like a parody or spoof or throwback to epidemic horror movies like Night of the Living Dead, The Evil Dead, The Texas Evil Dead, and all those kind of horror films, called Cabin Fever. And when it was released when it was premiered at its screening in September 2002, it actually received some positive reception from people. People were, like specifically from directors Quentin Tarantino and Peter Jackson, who suspended production of Lord of the Rings Return of the King twice to show his whole cast and crew the movie because he loved it so much. And Quentin Tarantino even proceeded to call Eli Roth the future of horror when he watched the movie. So eventually, the movie was properly released in 2003 to the public, and it was more decently received. I mean, some people are split on it. Some view it as a perfect little funny little turn-off-brain horror flick, as a good kind of little throwback, and others just view it as a gratuitous mess. And there's another half that views it as a gratuitous mess of unlikable characters. Which, to be fair, that is kind of a big flaw with Cabin Fever. I mean, I love Cabin Fever, guys, but I do also have some problems with it, and I don't regard it as like a masterpiece like some people would call it. Because yeah, it was filled with like, it was funny, but the characters were really annoying, unlikable assholes. Like, come on, like Eli Roth. College people do not act this annoying like those annoying idiots in that movie did. Hell no. So eventually, Eli Roth was starting to go on and make another movie. I think there's rumor that some people wanted him to direct a remake, but Eli Roth didn't want to do that, and eventually he was called to meet up with Quentin Tarantino, and they found this brutal website, I think around the dark web. I forget what it was, but it was some kind of torture website where you torture people for profit. And that gave Eli Roth the next idea of his movie that would be, of course, Hostel. And so he worked with Quentin Tarantino on the movie because Quentin Tarantino convinced him to be his own person director. So he went and he made the movie. Quentin Tarantino executive produced the movie, and Eli Roth directed it, and they teamed up to make this. It was released at a screening around September 2005. However, it wasn't released to the general public to actual theaters until January 2006. So technically it's kind of a 2006 movie, but it was screened for the press in 2005, so it's still kind of a 2005 movie. But yeah. So, when Hostel was released, kind of the same reception as Cabin Fever, as in split reactions. Some people love the concept of it, which I do agree with. It's a pretty terrifying concept. And there's people that once again viewed it as yet another gratuitous mess, like how they thought of Cabin Fever. Which, to be fair, this movie kind of has the same problems as Cabin Fever to me, if not probably even worse problems than Cabin Fever. So yeah, my thoughts on the movie, well, this one's okay. It's a massive step down from Cabin Fever. I would watch Cabin Fever for this, but this is still pretty good. It's got a cool little terrifying concept, but let me explain the plot of this movie. 3 backpackers are in Amsterdam where they get locked out of their youth hostel. They are invited into a man's house where he tells them of a hostel somewhere in Eastern Europe, Slovakia, where the women are all incredibly hot and have a taste for American men. Yeah, because like these backpackers are only in Amsterdam just to party and have sex. Because it's Eli Roth. When they get there, everything is too good to be true. The hostel is to die for. Literally. Yeah, so I have watched this movie, and I think it's decent. Most people seem to view it as one of the worst things they ever saw, but there's also some who do like it. Personally, I find this one is the most overrated of the series. I love the concept, but here's the thing. If cliche characters get on your nerves, you'll have a really hard time seeing through the first hour of this movie, because, like, the first hour of this movie is, like, just three grown idiot men go around, just go around Slovakia going, hey, let's go, hey, let's hit Amsterdam, let's go to a museum where we can smoke pot and have sex with girls. It's like, oh my god. Yeah, like, seriously, like, this is a big problem why I find this movie a massive step down. Like, I didn't, the characters were unlikable in Cabin Fever, but at least they were actually kind of supposed to be unlikable takes on those annoying, obnoxious Friday the 13th characters. I mean, come on, like, the characters were kind of meant to be unlikable in that movie, and they were actually kind of funny to watch. Here, like, the unlikable characters here are just irritating to sit through, and you have to get through the first whole hour of them before you can get to the actual horror. Yeah, we quickly realized who was what type of character, and this was so annoying for me because it meant the script was kind of really predictable. Like, seriously, like, these guys are probably some of the most annoying characters I ever had to sit through. The like specifically the character of Ollie. Ollie like annoyed the shit out of me the most. I could not wait for his ass to die. Quick. Don't worry, but thankfully his stupid ass dies first of the three. Like, he's probably the one I hated the most. Like, all he does is go like rants on like, oh, I'm the king of Sweden stuff, and I'm gonna draw like two. He draws like two eyes on his like rear and buttocks, and he uses them to talk when in this sauna. And, like, just acts like he's probably the most idiotic throughout this whole movie. And but don't worry, thankfully his stupid ass dies first when they finally start getting to the horror. Like, the film only, but yeah, it's like, seriously, Eli Roth, people do not act anything like this. Like, men around these three guys' age, or I think college students once again, do not act anywhere this annoying at all. Like, or this immature and idiotic like any of these three jackasses did in this movie. Just, no. I've been to college and people, like, when I went to college, nobody acted anywhere like that. The film only gets really good. It gives out the much awaited horror and gore after a very long time, probably about an hour into it. Once this starts, the film becomes a lot better, but not by much. I mean, like, when the actual gore begins, it's well worth it. More than 50 gallons of blood was used in this movie. It's not very surprising at all. Just because, but yeah, like, there's some really good kills here. I mean, some good little effective gore scenes. I mean, when this movie premiered in theaters, there were like a lot of walkouts. Several people fainted. Paramedics had to be called. Like, no, really, this was really that effective with the gore in its eyes. So, like, if you like ignore that first whole annoying half of the whole sex and American Pie junk, like, you actually have a pretty decent movie with a really scary concept. Like, just an organization that tortures people for profit is actually a very terrifying concept. And I actually salute Eli Roth for coming up with something like that. Like, you see every single cut, drill, saw, whatever. Like, none of the gore is censored in this movie. Like, when I first thought of, like, when the gore bit was starting, I thought it was just giving a bunch of meaningless gore and blood, like the typical Friday 13th stuff again. But it was actually really interesting. Like, not surprising, really. Like, there's some plot turns, plus the kind of predictable one, specifically, like, where, yeah, spoiler alert, guys, this isn't really a spoiler for those who've seen it, but the girls they meet are actually evil, and I really like that. Like, I almost thought the girls were just gonna be another victims, but no, they actually really surprise it. Like, the girls are actually evil, they betray them. There's a pretty good twist. I mean, it actually, yeah, the gore does redeem the film as a whole. It wasn't just some stupid plot followed by gore. There was a boring, slow, annoying beginning, redeemed by well thought out reasons as to why people are slaughtered so brutally and explicitly. And what's like better is like, what I like is like, the one guy that's left Paxton is like an annoying jerk idiot at first. Like, yeah, like, at first half I really cannot stand him in the first half, but when the later half happens, when he escapes his torturers, he starts killing all the torturers, and but he actually still has a bit of, like, he still has a good side to him. He's way better than Ollie. I mean, I still think he's the best character in the movie, really. Really, I eventually love how he, like, kills all the torturers, he gets revenge on them, and, like, that's also where the film starts to get good. Like, sorry. Then of course he goes back, and eventually he's about to escape, but then he hears the cries of this like Japanese girl they met earlier, who's also getting tortured by them. And then this was probably the most grossest scene in the movie. It almost made me gag when I first saw this movie. Like he shoots the guy that's torturing her. He frees her, and he sees that her eyeball's been burnt out and dangled. So he grabs a pair of scissors and yeah, I have to close my eyes at this part. Like he cuts it, and they start the yellow stuff starts leaking out of her eyeball. Yeah, that was actually very effective. Like that was not easy for me to sit through. And another great part I like is the very end where the Dutch businessman that kind of killed his friend Josh. Josh is in the bathroom. Paxton falls into the bathroom, and of course he sees the card lifted under his stall. Dutch businessman goes to pick it up, and then Paxton grabs him, cuts off the very same fingers that of the Dutch businessman that Paxton lost in his escape, and he bursts through, drowns the Dutch businessman, and then lifts up his head, his near drowned head, and then he pleads for his life, but Paxton just slits his neck and just drops him in the toilet dead. And I just like how it kind of ends. Movie ends there, and then actually, now that I mention it, there's actually two endings. And please, if you watch this movie, please watch the one with the theatrical ending, because this is the better ending. The alternate ending is actually Dutch businessman reunites with his daughter. Still kind of the same. Paxton follows them to the bathroom. And then it gets a little different here. The Dutch businessman tries to wait for his daughter, but his daughter does not come out. So he goes to check, and then he realizes when he sees her teddy bear, realizes she's gone missing. He frantically looks over for her, and we find out that Paxton had kidnapped the daughter. As the train has left, and he's just left to scream in despair. Dutch businessman is just left to scream in despair. Yeah, no. That was probably a really stupid ending. I'm glad Eli Roth cut that out, because that ending makes absolutely no sense. Because people would have heard the girl screaming. So yeah, I'm glad Eli Roth just cut that. And I'm glad we got the revenge ending, because the revenge ending is way better. The alternate ending just makes Paxton a way more unlikable than he was in this movie. In this one with the actual ending, he actually gets way more likable by the end of it. On the whole, if you're love gross shock factor, you should see it just for that. For those who are really bloodthirsty, want to see a film that is absolutely makes you want to wash through your fingers and then be sick afterwards, disgusting, gross on that level, this is for you. I think this is probably of 2006 or 2005, 2006. Yeah, this would probably be the best horror film in terms of gross, in terms of goriness. Because the best horror film of 2006 is still The Descent, guys. The only problem is you just kind of have to sit through a very boring, uninteresting, inspiring hour of just unlikable jackasses. Again, but sure, it doesn't message up the works of such as The Shining or Exorcist, but it does come awfully close to Friday 13th and such. You have to sit through the whole American Pie shit just to get to the gore and stuff. So if you're willing to sit through annoying characters just to get to the gore, then the gore will finally wait up is actually kind of worth it. So, but only, I would definitely not watch this if you are not a fan of torture horror, because this movie would not be for you then. Or if you're not a fan of films like Saw, then probably don't watch this, because this is a really, really extremely graphic at times. However, so yeah, that's my review of Hostel. I think it's just okay, but it's a massive step down compared to Cabin Fever. And here's how I'm going to rank it. I am going to give Hostel a 6 out of 10. Alright, that pretty much wraps up my review for the first movie, Hostel movie. So I'll put Hostel back. And actually, now that I do think about it, I'm actually going to be reviewing next. Episode 3 is going to be none other than the sequel, Hostel Part 2, which I've actually grown some better thoughts on. So Hostel Part 2's review is going to be a lot better. So, yeah. But Hostel Part 2 will be next. So, yeah. But until then, that will be it for this review. Thank y'all for watching. If you like this and want to see more, and don't forget to like, subscribe to Movie Lover 120.